Imagine trusting your bank so fully that you let them manage your money and your identity only to discover that they've opened thousands of accounts in your name and without your knowledge. I've seen it all. For nearly 25 years, I worked at the DOJ where I investigated some of the largest antitrust cases in the country. Now in retirement, I'm working for you. Welcome to the Antitrust Insider. These are accounts you never asked for, cards you never signed up for, and fees you never agreed to. The bank's leadership knew about it. Regulators were being misled, and the damage to ordinary people was real. This is the Wells Fargo fake account scandal, where 3.5 million unauthorized accounts were created. Today, we'll trace how it happened, who was responsible, what finally cracked it open, and whether the cure came in time. Segment 1. Culture, Incentives, and Early Warning Signs. From its earliest days, Wells Fargo built a reputation as a powerhouse of cross-selling. Cross-selling means encouraging existing customers to buy additional products, things like checking accounts, savings accounts, credit cards, insurance, and the like. If you already had one product, their goal was to make you buy more. In that environment, Wells Fargo employees were under constant pressure to meet daily, weekly, and monthly quotas for products sold per customer and products sold per household. Branch managers had benchmark goals with compensation tied to those goals. Bonuses, promotions, and people's careers depended on those numbers. As hitting targets became more difficult, employees began to game the system by opening deposit accounts without customer consent. Some created fake email addresses or PIN numbers in customers' names, some forged signatures, and some moved money from real accounts into fake accounts to create the appearance that those accounts were funded. This practice is known inside the bank as simulated funding. Also, many unauthorized credit cards and savings accounts were opened. All of this to hit sales numbers. There were early warning signs. Employees complained about the pressure, while audits and reviews flagged irregularities and whistleblowers attempted to raise alarms. But the leadership structure, combined with the incentives, often rewarded target hitting over ethical behavior. Supervisors who failed to meet quotas were penalized, which created pressure for the staff to deliver results by any means. In its 2020 settlement, the Department of Justice found that between roughly 2002 and 2016, illicit practices like forging, opening unauthorized accounts, altering customer details, and creating products customers didn't request were tolerated or turned a blind eye to, especially when they helped branches meet their performance goals. Segment 2. Discovery and the 3.5 million number. The first public knowledge of the scheme came around 2013 as reports began to surface of customers being charged unexpected fees, receiving debit or credit cards they didn't request, or discovering accounts in their names that they didn't authorize.
Didn't sign up for this.
In 2016, the CFPB, along with the Los Angeles City Attorney and others, imposed a $185 million fine on Wells Fargo. The fine related to accounts that employees opened without authorization or consent and for charging the associated fees. From 2011 to 2016, around 5,300 employees were fired for participating in branch-level fraudulent sales practices. At that point, Wells Fargo acknowledged that approximately 1.5 million deposit accounts and over 500,000 credit card accounts may have been opened without customer authorization. But by September 2017, Wells Fargo raised that estimate. What was once thought to be about 2.1 million unauthorized or fake accounts was revised upward by 1.4 million. That brought the total to approximately 3.5 million unauthorized or fake accounts. Each of those accounts often carried fees, and some customers got hit with overdraft charges. This did damage to their credit scores, and many didn't even realize what was happening. As regulators took time putting all the pieces together, lawsuits, investigations, and audits dragged on. Wells Fargo's board eventually ordered independent investigations. Media pressure grew, and executives testified before Congress. In February 2020, Wells Fargo agreed to a sweeping settlement with the Department of Justice and the SEC, paying $3 billion in total. Under that deferred prosecution agreement, Wells Fargo admitted to many of the wrongful practices. These included misuse of customers' identities, creation of unauthorized accounts, charging fees, hurting credit ratings, falsified records, and more. The misconduct had spanned more than a decade. Segment 3, why it took years to stop. So, with all the warning signs, how did this go on for so long? First, the incentive structure. Tracking only sales numbers without sufficient checks and balances meant that branch managers got rewarded for high product numbers and not for customer satisfaction or ethics. Employees who raised concerns often faced pressure, were ignored, or were disincentivized from speaking openly. Second, the internal controls and oversight were weak. Audits sometimes flagged issues, but responses were slow or superficial. Customer complaints were often buried. Also, altering customer contact information meant some customers never even got statements or notices about the cards opened in their name. Some of the fake accounts were hidden by employees by changing an address or email so the customer never realized it. Third, regulatory oversight has limitations. Regulators did react in 2016 when the scheme became more visible, but many of the practices had been in operation for much longer. Once regulators began, there were investigations, reviews, negotiations, lawsuits, evidence collection, and witness interviews. But Wells Fargo pushed back. They had prestige, size, and political influence, which are all factors that can slow accountability. Fourth, leadership failures. The toxic culture at Wells Fargo didn't suddenly appear overnight. It was built over years under top executives like John Stumpf, the former CEO, and Carrie Tolstedt, who ran the community banking division. Tolstedt retired just before the scandal came to light and later faced penalties and clawbacks. Stumpf himself was forced to resign, banned from working in the banking industry, and ordered to pay millions in fines. Critics still argue that both leaders should have acted sooner before damage spread across the entire company. Fifth, reputational inertia. Wells Fargo was once highly praised in banking circles for its cross-selling culture and product per household efficiency. That reputation meant that many people gave them the benefit of the doubt against incoming complaints. Internal metrics, quarterly earnings, and investor relations all reinforced the push to produce growth. This made it more difficult for internal whistleblowers or mid-level managers to expose shady practices. What eventually changed? External pressure that brought an internal reckoning. Regulatory fines and lawsuits piled up as media exposés and congressional hearings invited increased public concern. Next, the bank's business model was under legal and financial scrutiny. This is where Wells Fargo's internal culture began to shift. Sales goals for branch staff were eliminated or scaled back. There were major revisions to branch incentive programs, and there was increased focus on compliance and oversight. Also, in 2018, the Federal Reserve imposed an asset cap on Wells Fargo, meaning that the bank could not grow its assets beyond what they were in 2018 until certain reforms were made. That restriction was a serious regulatory punishment. As of 2025, the asset cap has been lifted as regulators say Wells Fargo has shown substantial progress in remediating its internal culture, risk, compliance, and governance deficiencies. What can we take away from this scandal? First, even trusted institutions can go wrong when human incentives are not aligned with ethical oversight. If your employee bonuses, promotions, and success metrics reward volume over honesty, you create a fertile ground for abuse. Second, small abuses can grow into massive scandals if there's no oversight to stop them. A single fake account or unsolicited credit card might look minor on its own, but when those practices spread to millions of cases, the damage multiplies. Customers were hit with mounting fees, wrecked credit scores, and in the end, a deep erosion of trust in the bank itself. Third, regulatory tools matter, but they must be used. The fact that this went on for over a decade shows gaps in oversight, in internal controls, and in whistleblower protections. Regulators eventually responded, but only after the damage had already spread to millions of people. Fourth, corporate culture is hard to change, but it must change. It may take removing or disciplining top executives, changing incentive structures, improving transparency, and building stronger internal review systems. But leadership accountability is where changes to corporate culture begins. Fifth, for consumers, staying informed is not just good practice, it's necessary. Monitor your statements, question credit cards you never applied for, and check for fees on bank products that you never asked for. The Wells Fargo scandal, with more than 3.5 million unauthorized accounts, shows what happens when the drive for profit overwhelms basic ethics. The financial, regulatory, and reputational fallout for Wells Fargo continues to this day, and for many customers who were caught in the middle, the harm may last long after the headlines have disappeared. What are your thoughts on the Wells Fargo scandal? Comment below. If you found this video helpful and informative, please hit that subscribe button, like, and comment. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay honest, and come back for more Antitrust Insider.